techniques did Adolf Hitler use to brainwash the people into giving him so much power? Well, let's journey back to the end of World War I in Berlin, the capital of Nazi Germany. Yes, the Fuhrer decided that he would rule the world with words. "I will never fire a gun," he devised. "I will not have to." Still, he was not rash. Let's allow him at least that much. He was not a stupid man at all. His first plan of attack was to plant the words in as many areas of his homeland as possible. He planted them day and night and cultivated them. He watched them grow, until eventually a great forest of words had risen throughout Germany. It was a nation of farmed thoughts. This quote is located on page 445 in Max Vandenberg's book called The Word Shaker. This shows exactly what Hitler did in order to gain his power. Hitler's rise to power begins at the end of World War I when he becomes obsessed with finding someone to blame for Germany's problems. After deciding that the Jews were the best option to put the blame on, Hitler began a 7-step plan to mind-wash the people into accepting Nazi ideology. The first step in the 7-part plan was taking control of government. After a few manipulative speeches were made, Hitler convinced Germany that basically the only way to fix their problems was to appoint him chancellor. On January 30th, 1933, he is made chancellor by President at the time, Paul von Hindenburg. From there, Hitler took advantage of that power, and he granted himself more and more. Hitler strengthened his power in order to rise to absolute Nazi power. By becoming chancellor, he was next in line as president, and when Hindenburg died, he took the position with pleasure. Other political parties were beginning to be banned, and the government was being reorganized. By taking power of the government, Hitler was able to fill the minds of all people with information fueling and promoting the Nazi Party. The second step was limiting churches' powers. Hitler knew that the pastors and popes of churches had a large influence as to what its followers believed, so many non-Nazi pastors and popes were sent to concentration camps to ensure that no one came in between Hitler and his plans to punish the harmless Jews. The third of 7 parts was through culture. Hitler's goal was to achieve complete Nazification. This meant Nazi beliefs were imposed on all aspects of life. There are many ways that Hitler did this, but there are 3 that are very noticeable. The first was art during that time. All artwork had to be acceptable compared to Nazi values, or the art had to portray Nazi ideas throughout the piece. Another way the culture was shaped was through the burning of books. Any books written by Jews or containing Jewish protagonists or positive outlooks on Jews were burned, often publicly. Lastly, some homosexuals were persecuted for their beliefs because they did not fit the image of the ideal family. The next portion of the plan was controlling the people's lives even at work. The Nazis famously claimed that they had control over Germans' lives from the cradle to the grave. There was first the RAD, which is known as the National Labor Service, and that sent men younger than 18 years old to public works. In 1936, Hitler introduced a forced military requirement, so once those young men were of age, they were sent off to war. There are also 2 other organizations that controlled the conditions at work and the amount of free time that the citizens were given. Branching off of work, education and youth were also another part of gaining full power. Education was edited to teach Nazi images and ideas in school as well. Hitler made it so that schools revolved around the Nazi ideology. Content was changed so that it glorified the Nazi Party. In order to ensure nothing could come between future generations believing in the Nazi ways, Hitler made sure that school teachers and professors were part of the National Socialist Teachers League. There are also 2 gender-split groups for children. For the girls, they had an organization called BDM, which was required by law and prepared them for womanhood and influenced Nazi ideas. The other division was for the boys, and it was called Hitler Youth. Hitler Youth prepared boys for war and put them in a Nazi state of mind. It also allowed for physical conditioning for the war. Next step, terror. Germany was made so that citizens became fearful to revolt in any way against the government. There was a group called the SS, which is also known as the Black Shirts. They were personal bodyguards of Hitler. These men gained control of everything and performed the extermination of those Hitler did not think were worthy of life. There was also the Gestapo, also known as the Secret State Police. It was a ruthless group made to exterminate any protesters or political opponents. Also, they were the ones who rounded up the Jews when it was time to go to the concentration camps. The concentration camps were also one of the largest creators of fear. Lastly, there was propaganda. Hitler had a man just for the job. This man is known as Joseph Goebbels. Goebbels' job was solely to mind-wash the people with media. His task was to do anything to idolize Hitler. Large mass rallies were held in Nuremberg. Newspapers censored out poor reflecting news. Radios were sold cheap intentionally so that many people would listen to the censored radio talks. And films were being made just to glorify war and show Jewish hatred. These were just some of the strategies used by Goebbels. All in all, when all of the 7 strategies are put together, it can be seen that Hitler did accomplish his goal. Hitler did end up influencing Nazi ideas on all aspects of life. As said in The Book Thief, he planted them day and night, and cultivated them. He watched them grow until eventually great forests of words had risen through Germany. These words that were planted were the words of brainwash.